Okay, I hope we can all see my screen. So I was invited to have a conversation about trust and privacy in the digital era. And I will attempt to have a practitioner or a conversation about what we do on a daily and also merge it with a few academic approaches. Some of the discussions or the interpretations might be contextual, but hopefully by the end of the next few minutes, President, I don't know how much time I have, but hopefully I should take about 20, maybe 25 minutes, and then we can have a conversation at the end. So just for a disclaimer, the conversation here is just for knowledge sharing, no endorsement, and of course, I also respect the copyrights of any of the information or pictures I'm using in here. So, President, it's important, I think, we look, and friends, that we look at where we are coming from in relation to trust and privacy, because these are things that relate to us. A long time ago, I think when the likes of Tusu were quite young, a lot of things happened from a physical interaction. You came to my home, I came to your home, or we met somewhere, we shook hands, we had a conversation. And if I was not physically available, the person was not physically available, then not so much transaction would take place. Those of you who read the Bible, in Genesis chapter 3, I think verse 6 to 7, it talks about when man first realized that they were naked. And I will take the very literal meaning of those words. I know the theologists here might have deeper meanings of this, but after eating that fruit, said they realized they were naked. And when God came back into the garden and called and said, "Where are you?" The answer was, "Oh, we are naked." Totally, nakedness had nothing to do with their geographical location. When we look at the Roman Empire and some of these people who lived around those times, you'd find, for example, toilets where in a communal area, men or women would sit in an area to ease themselves. The old kings, or those who had, well-to-do off, would sometimes even be engaging in coitus in an environment where they had their maids and so on. So the issue of privacy maybe could be new, but it could also be an old issue. And of course, as African communities, we've lived in this communal area, the Ubuntu area. We lived and engaged with each other. If I found my neighbor's kid misbehaving, I would administer whatever disciplinary action that we needed to administer, and so on and so forth. And we see that even our architecture and our behavior has morphed over the years, looking at the way we constructed our buildings and how we had walls or the lack of it, silent reading, use of beds, and of course, as we've moved on and become more digitalized, we look into some of these walls coming up. And so the evolution, from that to where we are, we've created tools for protection, tools for trade. We've created, of course, physical tools, but also very intellectual tools. We've gone through industrial revolutions. We went into record keeping and data processing, of course, trade and exchange, and of course, questions about our identity. And right from the point of physical self, I don't think the caveman or whoever it was, Adam, had an identity card, so to say, into the legal person. And now we discuss a lot of fusion or the disappearance of the line between who are you or who are we physically or legally and who are we digitally. And we notice that also in the digital world, I can even have a lot of multiple personas, some of which could be real, others may not be real. So as I've mentioned, we've gone through all these changes, in a way trying to enhance our productivity, our enhancement of the way we do things, processing everything, hyper connecting everything, coming up with sorry, I'm moving. Sorry, President and host. I hope the meeting is secured. I'm seeing activity, which is a bit suspicious. I'm sorry.
Sorry
but yeah, I'm hoping that there's sufficient controls. Sorry. So we've done a lot in terms of trying to enhance the way we work. Human beings, we are very intelligent, and we try to create a lot of convenience, and we see a world where we are getting heavily interconnected, and that means we are generating a lot of data. And in this digital age that we've moved in, it's sometimes really hard to know and hard for us to control or know how much data we give away, whether willfully or sometimes even unknowingly. And of course, that has its own advantages and of course some disadvantages. Most of us now have so many items that give off data or collect data around us, from your smartwatches to your phones. Everything is a smart everything. Your cars have GPS trackers, your homes have cameras. We are filling all sorts of forms, whether it's job application forms or forms for government services or private services, insurance, and so on. So this convenience, which is great, perhaps also has a connotation on how much privacy we have, and we're going to go into a bit of definitions later. From a digital perspective, if you look at where we've just come from, from the old times, you had to see me to know I was the one. Digitally, my identity is some sort of username. If I can put in a username somewhere and use some sort of password or fingerprint or whatever it is, a PIN code. When you go to the bank, you go with an ATM card and a PIN code, and the bank assumes it is you who has drawn the money. So if thieves took your ATM card and PIN, or on mobile money, that happened, the system and the systems around us assume that is you. So it's important that we protect our identity, we protect our data, and we'll go into some of that. And what data are we dealing with? Of course, it's expansive, and it's in the few minutes we have, we cannot cover everything. But we have personal identifiable data. We share a lot of location services on our phones and so on. A lot of health data in the clinics. The buzz going on now is vaccination, which is a great thing, and I hope we are vaccinated. But again, how much of this should be kept confidential? How much of it should be public? Our finances, property, opinions, whether political or what we love or what we don't like, or who we like or who we don't like, our behaviors, our friends online, and I put friends in quotes because many of us have the so-called friends, but these could be machines, they could be people, they could be anything. We have no idea. They could be, sometimes you find a 70-year-old person posing as a 20-year-old beautiful lady or young man
AG Peter, unmute, please.
Oh,
sorry.
I don't know why you lost me. Okay, we have all this data, which is being generated from different devices that are all interconnected, different forms that we fill, different areas and touch points that we have. And some of this data could be used, of course, for great purposes. It might also be used for not so great purposes. And so what could be done with this data? What's the implication? Just 1 second. So what's the implication of all this? Right now, there are a lot of technologies, a lot of use cases that get into a lot of data analytics, whether it's diagnostic or prescriptive or predictive. And a lot of algorithms have been created for different purposes, because most of these algorithms are created to fit or to feed into or to answer a certain question. So we hear things like artificial intelligence, machine learning. For these things to run, they need data. And then, but of course, they are sometimes done for particular purposes. You have Siri on your phones or Google Talk and all sorts of things, or Google Maps and so on. This has to learn how to behave. And of course, the more data it gets, just like us human beings, the more data we get, the more we can interpret things. Those of you who are in economics or statistics or any sort of forecasting, the more data you have, the more accurate you are within, as you work on your models. So this can be used to profile us for, different purposes. And what this means that then as we engage online or wherever it is, based on our profile, one could determine how to treat us. It could be a nice welcome. It could be, please stand out of the line for a check because you look like this or you look like that. How to commoditize us. We are sold, or our data is sold for advertising or other purposes. Influence our beliefs. We've heard about all this talk about elections in some of these countries being influenced, our taste in what we buy and what we like. We could also take over our identity, purport to be, somebody purports to be to be you when they are not you, because as long as I can show up, we've seen a lot of fake news. People get somebody's picture, create an account online and purport to be them, or people asking for money and say, oh, I'm stuck in this country, I lost my phone, please send mobile money to this number, and so on and so forth. So it's important that we protect our data because of managing impersonation, identity theft, safeguarding sensitive and confidential information. Non-repudiation. Non-repudiation is a principle, or what it means basically is that if I send you information, if I send you data, I should not be able to deny that I'm the one who sent it. You should be able to actively identify that it's coming from me, and you should not be able to deny that you received it. And I should be able to confirm that you received it. So especially when it comes to trade and all this exchange of information, the sender should be identified positively and not denied. And of course, the recipient are the same. The question here is, how do we tell who the sender is if I'm purporting to be one, or the recipient, and so on? So ethical conduct, integrity, cybercrime, or managing such crime, issues of fraud, some research that goes on sometimes without our, if you're a subject in a research agenda, you should know that I'm a subject here. And sometimes some of this data is used without authorization, targeted marketing and so on. And of course, when we look at the Declaration of Human Rights, Article 12, it also highlights privacy as a human right, and I've highlighted a few things here about privacy or correspondence, and of course honor and reputation. And we've seen people's reputations brought into question because something has been said or has leaked, which shouldn't have happened. So what are some of the definitions as we've set the stage? So personal identifiable data, any data that is personal to you and would identify you as an individual. And this could be a combination of things. If I know your home and your name and your date of birth, I could positively say you're the one because you're the one who comes from here, and this is how old you are, and this is your name, this is your ID number, and so on and so forth. There is a lot more text on some of this. And privacy, there are a lot of definitions of this, but for purpose of our discussion, the quality or state of being away or apart from company observation, or the freedom from unauthorized intrusion. That's what privacy would mean. And some of us would want to enjoy that our boundaries are respected to this extent. And ultimately, what we are trying to achieve here, or the purpose of this, that we should have a trust system, a trust mechanism. When I come and shake your hands and say, and we sign an agreement, it is me who came and signed. But now if I'm signing digitally, if you're dealing with me, or if you're seeing news, online, because everybody is now an expert on what the facts are, how do we create a trust system? And this is a confident belief that something is being done right and delivered as promised. Of course, sometimes when we bring in the word belief, it could be contextual, or depending on who is defining it. And there could also, of course, be a lot of conversation here. But I think what we need to appreciate is that you want to believe and feel comfortable that something is being done consistently in the right way. Something right is being done the right way and delivered as promised. So this perhaps are some of the key parameters we're looking at here. And as I mentioned, we are targeting trust. Of course, if our systems give us comfort that our privacy is respected, our trust is enhanced. And for us to enhance our privacy, we have to protect, and we have to create some sort of standards, guidelines to help us in this. And in such a global economy where we are having all sorts of interconnectedness, data becoming the lifeblood of what we are doing, a lot of innovations and so on, the respect of confidentiality and the attainment of integrity and availability need to be maintained. And we see a lot of what we call digital trust deficit, where people go to the supermarket with a credit card or debit card, but they would rather go to the ATM, draw money, and go and pay at the counter because they are not sure that the point of sale machine at the teller is safe. And we've seen so many cases where fraud has happened in such cases because somehow your information is skimmed. So this is why we need to do this, and this is why the conversion is important. And how do we achieve this? There are so many measures. I've just picked on these for purposes of our discussion today. We have regulatory, we shall look into that, some technical measures, some administrative measures. Of course, at the heart of it, sometimes we depend on everything else and forget our own behavior change. And of course, we have to enforce most of these. So on a technical or some of these measures, I think awareness is important, like the way we're having this conversation today. Many times you're online or you're filling a form and you don't check, you agree to everything without checking whether you should have agreed to that. And sometimes you've mortgaged or given away your right to privacy. Things like, can your data be used for marketing or whatever it is? Many times we agree and move on. The free Wi-Fi's we use, you're in a place and it's easy to create a Wi-Fi spot, a hotspot which reads the name. Let's I don't want to mention names here, but which mimics the name of where you want it. You are at a hotel X and there's Wi-Fi X, at hotel X, and you think it's okay. So it's important to check identity management and access management, the passwords you use, changing them, perhaps using multi-factor authentication. What this means, for example, if you're logging into, let's say ATM, you have an ATM card. So for you to get money out of the ATM, you must have the card. So something you have, and then you have to have a PIN. So something you have, which is a card, but you also have a PIN code. So something or sometimes you have a PIN code and also use your fingerprint or eye scanner. We've seen some of these solutions somewhere. So you need to know my PIN code, but also know my, have my fingerprint if you must. And sometimes the more the better for purposes of your safety. Encryption, from a simple perspective, if you're on a website, for example, you're trying to buy something, ensure that the website you're dealing with, as a minimum, has what they HTTPS, basically it's securing your communication in transit, so that somebody may not. It's like you're keeping your information in an envelope. Remember, with the way we used to have postcards, anybody could get your postcard and read. But when you put your information in an envelope, the assumption here is that I can see your address and where it's coming from or where it's going, but I can't read the content of the letter. That's what, in simple terms, that's meant. Endpoint protection, safeguarding your computers, an antivirus or some anti-malware to minimize those. Be careful what you post online. The internet does not forget, and sometimes we post so many things which, whether legal or not legal, could also come back to bite us. We've seen people who post that they've gone on holiday and there's nobody home, and that's when thieves come to attack your home because you're telling the whole world that, oh, I'm not at home, and so on. Most of your devices or accounts or solutions or services we use online have privacy settings. Most of these social media sites and most solutions have privacy settings. So it would be worthwhile looking through those and activating them, so that at least you enhance your security. Check your facts before reacting. We receive emails telling us that I'm the son of Abacha, I have 100 million, but they are looking for my account. And you think somebody loves you that much and you share information. Or I'm a bank, we are upgrading our system. Please send us your username, password, name, date of birth, your mother's name, and so on. And everything looks like your bank. But what you don't find, what you never check is to check that, you find that the email is actually coming from Yahoo or Gmail. I don't know any bank that uses those systems. So it would be good to check these, of course, and also, of course, we have a lot of fake news. So sometimes we give away things not because somebody has done a very technical, complicated hack, but they have just tricked you into giving out your information. And then before you know it, you've given out your PIN code or password or whatever it is, and somebody is pretending to be you. Physical protection, those of you who have, for example, credit cards and debit cards, you have those, what are they called, CCV numbers at the back, or your expiry date at the front. So it's not a technical thing, it's a physical thing. Protecting that information is very important here. From an organization-wide, classifying your data and inventorying. Classifying means you've seen information for that. Is this for public? Is it internal use? Is it classified, confidential? Is it top secret? so that if somebody came across that data, they know how to deal with this. Those of you who work in governments or some of these institutions, I'm sure you're familiar with this. Instituting data loss and leakage prevention programs. There are technical solutions for this, but also policies and procedures that you could put around these advanced threats solutions. Simple things like timeout sessions. You leave your computer and you're not timing out. At some point, you should get a screensaver which forces you to have a password to get back in. So if I've just left my computer to the bathroom, in a few minutes or seconds, it should close. If I've left my phone there, it should be locked, Of course, maintaining records and audit trails for evidential purposes, for review purposes, and certainly there are a lot more protection measures. This is just a quick highlight. From a regulatory perspective, the right to privacy, again, goes way back, but some of the documented legal aspects to this go back about 1890, where, around the time people were trying to keep themselves safe from cameras and personal liberties and so on and so forth. But we've seen this grow. We've seen the general data protection regulations in covering most of the European Union area around 2018. Uganda, we have a law. It's a 2019 law, the Data Protection and Privacy Act, which is in force. And its objectives are to protect the privacy of individuals, of individual and personal data, and regulate the processing of personal information. And of course, it provides the rights of persons whose data is collected, and provides obligations of the data collectors and processors, and gives guidance on how this is disclosed. And we shall look at some of these shortly. But there are other laws that relate to the digital space and how we interact with our systems. Computer Misuse Act, Electronic Transactions Act, Electronic Signatures Act. We have the Registration of Persons Act, Communications Act, with a bit of consumer protection there, the NIT Act. There are quite a number. And of course, there might be provisions in other laws that relate to some of these aspects. But just for now, I think the most relevant piece of legislation on this subject, at least for Uganda, is the Data Protection and Privacy Act. I would invite us to have a look at it if you can. And in that law, it provides rights of individuals, the right to access your data, to rectify it, to block, to destroy it, to prevent processing, to relation to automated decision-making, to lodge complaints. And we recently had the office, the Personal Data Protection Office, which is housed, I believe, in Nita, Uganda, opened, and the director and the team set up. And I would invite us to look at some of those provisions there on that website from an individual perspective. This is just a quick summary of what is provided in the law. As we conclude, President, those of us who process data or collect data, we also have obligations. One is to register with that office, establish governance structures in relation to privacy, ensure that personal data is processed lawfully, collect what is necessary and use it for the intended purposes, embed protection in our operations, and of course, institute policies. And for data that we process out of Uganda or that we need to share coming in or going out, we have to ensure that it, of course, it's also lawful and follows, you carry out sufficient due diligence. So putting this all together, there are so many models and frameworks, but on a corporate level, on an individual level, it's good to assess what it is that you're giving out, what is your baseline, check against best practice, protect we've discussed some technical controls, some administrative controls, fiscal controls, sustain, create awareness. It's good that we keep ourselves informed and aware. We carry out audits. And of course, where there's an issue, respond, whether it's response to a breach, to handling incidents, to handling complaints or inquiries, or to reporting one, and so on and so forth. So this we could use as individuals. We could also use as companies. Of course, we still have a lot of challenges which might go beyond just the space of data protection. We still have knowledge gaps. We still have a bit of challenges with the appreciation on enforcement and some of the interpretation. It's a new act, as we've discussed. We are still grappling with understanding how we behave in a digital world. So those are some of the challenges, inclusiveness and coverage. But for now that we are where we are, it's important that we protect what is there and understand the liabilities and, of course, the opportunities of convenience that this brings. I think what I would say on a personal note, be careful what we share. Inquire and understand when you are filling in forms or any information that we give out, so that at least you can protect yourself. President, colleagues, that's what I wanted to share. Hopefully it can generate some conversation. I see experts here on call, and when comments I can answer. When questions come in, we might call on people who are more senior to me in this subject to answer them. President, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, AG Peter. We appreciate. After this presentation,
President Peter is sufficient.
Okay, you've reminded me of Tusu. Okay,
and he
Peter.
will answer the first questions. I saw him online.
Thank you. Peter, after your presentation, I even fear disclosing where I am. But still, I'd like to appreciate your talk. There were some hard words there, but you simplified them. You know, there are people on call here whose English has curfew. The English has already left them. So thank you. Yes, it was spot on. I will ask members to ask questions. I don't know that this will be the first, but still, anyone else can raise their hand, and I'll hand over this session to PE Justin. Okay, as PE Justin comes in, I see Honorable March. Yes, PE Justin, yes, take over, please.
Thank you, President. Our first question is from Robert Sebunya. Just playing devil's advocate, what is firewall for us, the average man? And then the second question comes from Julian Mwehere. We still see the requirement for people to write down their names, personal telephone numbers, and sometimes national ID numbers in an open book when accessing offices, and mostly government offices, which is against the DPPA. How can people be empowered to exercise their rights, particularly related to their personal data? Those are the two I have.
Okay, Justin, I have 3 hands. May I pick them? Honorable March, please.
Go ahead, President.
Fred or March, you have the floor. Okay, I'll go to DJ and Eddie to start with.
Thank you, President. I hope you hear me. Thank you, Peter, for taking us through that important subject. These days, whatever we talk about is technology, advancement, tech. Peter, my question is, we never so much invest into technology, putting up gadgets in our homes, spyware on our computers. But what shocks me that then the hackers come in and then hack into our systems. We've read about families, pensioners losing all their fortune because of the hackers. My question is, why labor to put up so much these sophisticated gadgets, and then you train the hackers? My question is, finally, who trained the hackers, Peter? Thank you.
Thank you, DJ Eddie. Fred Omach, are you able to ask?
Yeah, thank you, President. I'd like to thank Peter for a good presentation. I have two simple questions. The first one is, what does Peter say about e-procurement? Are we moving in the right direction, and how secure is it? And then the second and last, there's been a lot of talk about blockchain technology, that it is very efficient and is difficult to hack into. Why is it that it is not being used so much? Thank you very much, President.
Thank you. Let's take the last two. Tusu, please ask your question.
Thank you very much, President David. Peter, thanks a lot for that very interesting sharing. I've got two questions. One of them is sociological, and the other one will be probably touch more on the technological, so they're 90 degrees to each other. Now, first of all, privacy is a social construct. And therefore, what is called privacy in Europe and privacy in my village are totally different. In my village, when I get on a taxi, if anybody is sick or has got a problem, it becomes public news immediately. And if they are sick, they get as many remedies as their passengers in the car. And you find that the standards that are being utilized in our countries are more the Western standards. And after a certain extent, we have got a capture of our culture by the concept of privacy. We are becoming paranoid as a society and trying to keep private even things we should never keep private, especially government. And therefore, what do you think we need to do to achieve a real balance so that we're not totally surrendering to technology and our fear of technology, but say that, wait a minute, if I've got nothing to hide, why should I worry about privacy? So it comes to a few limited things I want to protect, but not everything else. Then the other one, which is more technological, and again, your comment will be appreciated. I've come to appreciate that even if you're not online, I can find out everything about you online. Unless you're a total recluse, you don't have any friends, nobody ever visits you, you don't have a phone, you never give your thumbprints anywhere, and so on. And therefore, I accept that it is literally impossible to maintain any privacy. And therefore, the more I appreciate that, the less I get worried about what people find out. What can be found out becomes about 3 or 4 things, and those I keep off anybody's information book of the net. So again, your comments will be welcome on that, Peter. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Peter. Quite a long question there, or two. We'll take one last one, and you'll have one other session of answering them, and that will be it with the questions because of time. So lastly, CMP Fredley.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and thank you, Peter, for the insightful sharing. My question really lies around the area of viruses and antiviruses that actually can mess up not just your information, but even, documents. And smart people who are high-tech actually manufacture these viruses as a way of actually making money. You can only get rid of them if you buy their antivirus. What's your comment? I find this, in terms of the regulation, I find this a bit challenging, but it is real. We must sometimes look for antiviruses to be able to survive. What's your comment about this, Peter? Thank you.
President, may I?
Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, thank you. I will attempt in the next few minutes to answer this. Robert, what's the firewall? I will try. What a firewall is some sort of gatekeeper. Just saying, okay, when we go to sorry, when you go to functions, if you have attended weddings, not our culture weddings, our village weddings have no invitation cards, but these weddings of Kampala-Ssese and so on, you come with a card and you're told you have seat number 3 and you're supposed to be 2 people. So if you come with 3 people, they will tell you you have to choose which 2 of you enter. So a firewall is a technical implementation of that in very simple terms, which just says these people are allowed in and maybe these people are allowed out. This sort of data or traffic is allowed in, this sort of data is not allowed, this is not, this is allowed out, this is not allowed in, and so on. So what it tries to do is basically say, if I'm able to identify you, you're okay to come, and if I've allowed you to come between 8 and 10, that's the window you're allowed, and if you're not, you're not. I think there's a lot of history, but in very simple terms, that's what it is. Julian, the issue that people are still required to register their names and put all sorts of information, yes, it's valid. However, some of these things predate the law. So we have the Data Protection and Privacy Act, which is a 2019 law, just before COVID. That's when the president assented to it. It's been, I think, it's been a legislation that was in the making for a long time, and now it's here. How perfect or not is another issue. And of course, getting the structures, I'm sure you're a bit familiar to how these legislations come into play. There's one thing, the legislation coming into play, then there's another thing, getting the structures to ensure that it's enforced and everybody understands it, and we change and conform and we comply to it. So yes, there might be practices which are still, which are right now violating the law, but it's the compliance is the process, awareness is the process. As I mentioned, there is a process of awareness, and there is a personal data protection office with a director who also happens to be a Rotarian, but a whole team that is doing this. I'm sure I'm not part of that team, but I'm sure they are working on an awareness mechanism. They are working on regulations and to ensure that all these people who are collecting data understand their obligations and limitations on what they could collect. I believe there will be a lot of awareness sessions. And what we are doing here, I would very humbly say we are a bit of the elite class, and some of us may also not appreciate. I'm still learning, and I know most of us here are still learning to, what's going on with that. So I guess it's a journey, and hopefully we'll get there. And of course, also engaging our law enforcement, our judicial systems to appreciate some of these things and ensure that we work with them. I'll just give you an example. The Electronic Transactions Act gives weight on the same weight on digital communication as it is the physical or the written hard copy communication. But we still see a lot of us trying to ensure that I need to see a memo on my table, and yet if I send you an email, that email should have as equal weight as a written memo. But culture change, and I think it touches a bit on what Tusu was saying about what is private in one place, and that's why I started off with back to our roots, where are we coming from, and the fact that privacy is a fairly new construct within our environment, and to a great part within a lot of the world environment. But certainly there are differences, and I think I did recognize the fact that there is contextual definitions or contextual interpretations. What works for us in our Ubuntu environment, or what we define as private in our environment may not be what is defined as private in another environment. But also we live in a world where we are copying almost everything that other people have done and importing it, whether it's cultural or from a trade perspective, or from behavior that to work on. So I totally agree, Tusu, with you. And I think I would throw the question back to us as cultural leaders, us as parents, us as a society, to review this issue and help ourselves improve. The issue of what, even if you're not online, of course, we are, like I mentioned, we're getting into a very hyper-connected, not from just a device perspective, but Tusu, you'll have no phone, but I will say I met this gentleman called Tusu. He's like this, he's a Rotarian, he's an academician. Somewhere I've put some sort of little footprint of, maybe not a footprint, a little identifier about you. And another person will corroborate that. And there are now technologies which can search and say, I can actually make up Tusu, even if Tusu has posted nothing, even if Tusu has never been online. So again, it creates a very challenging environment for all of us in this world. I'm not sure I have all the answers, but at least we can have a conversation and a debate on this. Certainly, one of the things that is happening, as you mentioned, is that the digital world is here. We are already in it. The fourth industrial revolution, perhaps the fifth. The speed of change is moving so fast. But back to behavior, back to ethics. If I have nothing to hide, and I think I touched a little bit on ethics, we didn't have a lot of time to go into it. Why should I be bothered? Or not, and that of course could be a conversation for a whole day. Honorable e-procurement, I'm not sure the angle we're asking this. Maybe I think it's from I believe government angle with the automation of the procurement value chain, PPD and so on. But if I look at the core of procurement, I have a need, I have a request for supply, and I've identified who can supply me, and I'm paying them. We've agreed on how we exchange the payments and so on. A lot of us are buying things off Amazon fairly safely, off Jumia, off all these platforms. Of course, that might be putting it sometimes maybe in a very simplistic way. But if we look at the complexities and what the e-procurement intends to do, if you ask me, I think the idea is great. We just have to make sure that it's implemented very well. It leaves great audit trails and so on, perhaps provides a lot of information for learning. I think the core for me would be the issue of value for money, because sometimes in government, a lot of emphasis is put on process. So as long as I'm able to justify the process, whether I got value for money or not then becomes secondary. But I know there's been efforts on making sure, look, processes complied with, but we're able to demonstrate value for money and demonstrate savings out of it. So I think it's a great idea. It's just how we serve it. Blockchain. Blockchain, as we advance and have a lot of innovations, there's a lot of things that are coming up. What blockchain is, imagine a ledger where we are making entries of what's happening and how we are transacting or what we are doing. And all of us have a copy of that ledger, and it never changes until we are all synchronized. And if anything changes, we all get to know. So in a way, in a very simplistic way, it means that nobody has monopoly of, imagine the land registry. As of now, I have my title. I assume and I imagine the record in the land registry is what I assume it to be, but I don't have visibility of that record. But imagine each of us had a copy of the land registry, just as an example, and that if there is a change, we all get to know. or I get to know if there's a change on my record, maybe it might enhance the trust, it might enhance or reduce the fraud, and so on and so forth. So it's perhaps more complicated, but in a very simple way, it's a distributed ledger. Now, why it's not coming into play yet? I think it's in play in some places, but sometimes adoption of technology can be slow. We have to change some processes, we have to change mindsets, we have to ensure there's sufficient legislation to guide all of us. There has to be, all of us have to have the platform, the connections, and the facilitation to engage and access these. I don't have all the answers, but those could be some of the factors why it could be slow. And of course, sometimes resistance to change, which could be motivated by different things that I might not know. Edward, hackers, and I will put it together with President Fred's issue of viruses. I don't know who trains hackers, but I think just like if I use our analogy of houses, these days everybody has you have a house, you have a CCTV camera, you have an alarm system, you have razor wires, sometimes electrified and so on. As you advance, some of these things are public. So where you buy the CCTV, I can also go and buy it. Where you buy the razor wire, I can also go and buy it. So some of this information is open, it's known to all of us. And just as you put it up, the other person is thinking about how to circumvent it. So it's the unfortunate bit of a free society, an open society where we have all this information. The things you learn on how to safeguard yourself, I could also learn on how to undo those safeguards. So hackers are people like you and me, but sometimes people are not, we use this word hacking when it's not. Today, when I was starting the conversation, I saw a bit of irregular activity, which worried me. We had this thing called Zoom bombing, and it wasn't hacking really in the technical sense of the word. If you leave your door open and a person comes from outside and enters your house and starts undressing within your house, have they broken into your house? Did they break the door? Or is it you who did not put controls and so on? So somebody's raising an issue of ethics, but I think that many of us who do Zoom sessions leave the whole room open. Somebody gets in and everybody is able to share their screen. And then we say we were hacked. No, you left everything open and a drunkard got into the house and messed up your party. Viruses, just like in a society, some people are noisemakers, some people are a nuisance. So some of these things are just pieces of software. Some people will make them for espionage, some people will make them just to disrupt others, some people will make them to, interrupt facilities, others make them just for the fun of, I can break into that computer system. So unfortunately, that's the world we live in, and we have to protect ourselves. So CMP Fred, other than taking the route of Tusu, where you decide to have no phone, no computer, no access, when you're online, there you have to now safeguard yourselves, just like you close your door at home to go to bed and hopefully sleep comfortably. President, I hope I've managed to answer. If I've not, we can always have a conversation. I know we can't cover everything in the short time.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. I know you can't answer all questions with such a topic. The questions are as many as the people on call. If you can respond to some in the chat, well and good. If you can't, we'll get another day. But we appreciate the information you've shared here. I know some people may have questions to whatever you've said, but that's okay. Justine, I don't think we can continue with the question Q&A. I'll just right away ask DJ and Eddie to appreciate our speaker. But before DJ and Eddie comes in, may I ask Sergeant to give me some more minutes, 10 at least. Over to you, Eddie.
Thank you, President. Yes, the digital era is here, and we have no choice. We have to embrace it. This reminded me President George Bush when he visited Uganda years back, and when he was addressing terrorists who had attacked Kenya and Tanzania, he said the world is a global village and there's nowhere to hide from. Peter, thank you so much for taking us through this important subject matter, which is the way to go. You showed us where we came from, Stone Age era, where Tuso and I we came from, and then now to the digital era, where Ivan Kasambeko is and others. You did take us through the digital perspectives. I had no clue about it, but now I know. We've taken us through the personal identification, personal identifiable data, implication of analytics, why trust and data protection, which you have answered where my question came from, data protection law, which is in offing, and then you did summarize with calling us to action. You cautioned us, especially people of my age, to be careful on what we share. So friends, there was no other person who can do this apart from Peter. And Peter, I want to thank you for always sharing your knowledge with others. We always reach you on short notes. We are very grateful and thank you for the gift of sharing with others. Friends, without further ado, join me to wherever you are to thank our guest speaker of the night. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And Peter, just to confirm that we have understood your talk, we're going to share a digital certificate. I will share a digital certificate to appreciate your talk to us. We thank you so much, and we appreciate. Please join us again.
Thank you, President. I appreciate the invitation and the time to share. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Friends, quickly, let me allow recognition of some members, but I'll request Kathy Nassali from Chwatre to prepare the final toast for us. It's a long time since we last saw you, but let me recognize a number of our guests. Arthur is here with us in Kulambiro Stroke Northern. We have Elizabeth Kush. Yeah, she's one of the overdue guests. We also have Robert. Robert is also an overdue guest and is here with us. I saw Lydia online. I saw Medi online. Gladys Navasal. Admin. I hope you join Rotary soon. And Dr. Mitch, please, if you have a guest, you yes, Dr. Mitch, welcome. Thank you for joining. Are you joining from Namugongo?
No. Right now I am in near Namugongo, but I couldn't make it. But at least I'm here digitally, President.
Oh, good. Thank you for joining in. Allow me to recognize the following CMPs. CMP Frederick, CMP Charles, CMP Medi, CMP Rose, and CP Samuel. Thank you for joining us. I saw PDG Stephen and Tusu, and of course our DG and Eddie. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, Discon Chair Phyllis, we appreciate that you could join us. Anyone with a guest, please raise up your hand. Yes, go, please.
Thank you, President. My guest, as usual, is Moses Nduchi. He's always happy to join us and enjoy fellowship with us. Moses, welcome.
Welcome, Moses. Pipi Deo, please.
Thank you, President. This is Zoe. I'm raising my hand on Pipi Deo.
Okay, please.
President, we have two guests with us. Three guests, yes.
Three,
we
okay.
Have Yes, we have Jeremy Chivukamsoke with us. He's most definitely joining Ssese at some point. We have Fatuma Namatovu, who is our guest as well. We have Liz Chigongo, Fenato Momani, yeah, and then we have Rotarian Anita Chidu of One Degea for now, and then we have Rotarian Cynthia PE of Cynthia Muchivi PE of Kampala-Ssese Hills, please. Thank you.
Wow, that's a that's a
also been joined. President, we've hosted the Vice President, Rotarian Irene Narayunga. This I say when I'm meeting. And then we also have Rotarian Pauline Bukenya from Machindia. Thank you, President.
Wow. As rather, Machindia cohort is full of guests. Where are the members? Anyway.
They are all present.
Okay. Hey, chitegede. Okay, I want to report that Kulambira and Northern have converged.
President, I'm online. I'm online. Cohort.
Oh yes, Fred, we recognize you. I was reporting that Kulambira and the Northern have combined their cohort, and we are meeting at Maritime, where Martin and Rosette are hosting us. We're having a good time here. It's dark, I can't show you these guys, but they are here. Just believe. Namugongo, thank you for hosting us. And we appreciate the month that you've hosted us. Is Rotarian Kathy ready to give us the final toast? Oh, before that, Namugongo, are you able to do a roll call of clubs?
Yes, President.
Hello.
Yes, Justin, do you have a roll call of clubs?
Yes, President.
Please go on.
President, our club attendance today, member attendance today is 53%, and we are privileged to have the following clubs in attendance: Rotary Club of Loba, Rotary Club of Maisha, Rotary Club of Seven Hills, RC Morning Tide Bugorobi, RC Chiwenda, Kampala Metropolitan, Lubaga, Lakeview, RC Kansanga, RC Kampala South, RC Ntinda, RC Chiwatuli, RC Machindie, E-Global, RC and RC Kampala North. We also had in attendance our Retract Club of Kampala-Ssese Islands. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Henry Sekamuli, one of the Henrys. We thank you, Namugongo. I don't think, Kathy, can you confirm if you can give us a final toast? Oh yes, Kathy. Yes. Kathy, before that, allow me announce that on Saturday we are going to dine with our guests online, our potential guests. So members, don't miss. You can invite others. We are recognizing our guests and hearing from them and introducing them to the whole club on Saturday. Please, over to you, Lieutenant Kathy.
Thank you, President David. And for this opportunity to say, and I'm happy to join you. The fellowship is lively. Happy to listen to Peter.
Okay, Kathy has drops. Can we say Rotary world over? Thank you. Thank you, friends. Let's assume Kathy has given the final toast. How do we respond? Unmute and respond.
Rotary world over.
Okay, thank you. The Chimeza
the
is
world
open.
over.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, President. God bless.
Honorable Fred Omach, don't get lost again, okay?
No, I'll not get lost now.
President, thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, Peter. We appreciate. There are people here who wanted to ask you what is www, but they are quiet. But next time,
President, okay, thanks. Yeah.
Next time we shall teach them everything. Cohort of are you collecting for your plus? I see the treasurer is here. Can you see the treasurer? She's
bring money, dues.
The treasurer is collecting for your plus. Namugongo, are you collecting?
President, if we can see our member died, then we can see the treasurer.
Where?
Do you see all these guys? Ngate babawulira temwaze mulaba Dani eri ku counter
batamivu just
ne admin chair
Namugongo muli mutya okay. Oh wow, thank you.
We're not doing badly. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to host.
Thank you for leading us.
You need some guidance for next Thursday.
Hey, number by